COVID cases at a 5-month low as more states look toward reopening. What does a mobile payments company want with a failed streaming service? We're talking Square buying Jay-Z's Tidal. And Love Hate 8 to end the week. Friday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Friday, March 5th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
Good Friday talk, Jill. What's the haps? How we doing?
All these years or all these months, that still makes me chuckle. I don't know why.
I know. I love it.
All right, Carlo, let's start with some news here. The U.S. recorded fewer than 40,000 daily new coronavirus cases for the first time in 5 months. Connecticut will start to lift capacity restrictions later this month, but unlike Texas and Mississippi, Connecticut will be keeping its mask mandate in place. In Ohio, Governor Mike DeWine laid out the plan for getting back to normal. Once there are 50 new cases per 100,000 Ohio residents for 2 straight weeks, all restrictions will lift.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I really liked that. I really liked what DeWine did there because it's instead of just sort of like throwing caution to the wind and going all like willy-nilly, he's putting down like actual markers, right? Like this is this is what we need to hit. And once we hit it, we're rewarded by, the restrictions lifting. I think that it's time for more governors to really come out and be like, okay, here's the plan. Here's where we need to get. Here are the actual data points that we have to hit. Here's how long we have to hit them. And then we're going to try and get back to normal. So, giving people something to strive for instead of just this like, okay, I just like going to depend on whenever my governor decides that the time is right. Scott Gottlieb, our old buddy, I say that as though we know him.
Friend of the pod. He doesn't know he's a friend of the pod.
Yes, the other Scott, who's friend of the pod and doesn't know it. But he's been really good lately. He's the former he's a Trump appointee. He was the former FDA commissioner under Trump. But he was on CNBC yesterday, as he usually is. And he was I would just recommend people check him out because he's doing a very good job. It's almost like he's been listening to our podcast because he's basically saying in sort of a more elegant way what we've been saying for a couple of weeks now, which is like we're sort of sitting between these two worlds and it feels very weird, right? It's like February was like straight up just bad, right? Bad. The pandemic was raging. It did not look good. March, things are looking up and we're in this sort of like weird no man's land. And then April is going to be significantly better. So, he's just doing a very good job of sort of giving these realistic targets. He also made a point that I think that we made the other day, which is that when the CDC comes out with their guidelines for vaccinated people, which they're expected to do any day now, they're probably going to be overly conservative. He was sort of saying that, they're going to make the mistake that they always do, which is to just be overly prescriptive and then get people, to the point where people are just not going to pay attention to them. Again, back to the dental dams. So he's,
you said it, not me.
Yes, of course. So anyway, I thought he was making the points that we were going to make. And, I just think we are going to be shocked, Jill, to sort of bastardize a line from Mad Men from Don Draper. I think we are going to be shocked at how different things are in a little bit, in 6-8 weeks, maybe. I really do. I think it's going to be almost weird how different the world's going to look soon.
I think there's like a stress factor associated with it too. If we can get there, right? I think there is still a risk of us letting our guards down too soon.
Sure.
A very, very real risk. But I know maybe I'm alone, but like I was in the office yesterday and I'm like, what is this office going to even be like filled with people? It's just part of me. I'm thinking to myself, life post-COVID, I don't even know. I'm so used to not doing anything and not really seeing anybody in person. It's exciting, but I think also a little bit stressful.
Oh yeah. Maybe our whole social lives are going to be so weird, right? Like we're going to shake hands anyway.
I know. I think the elbow, but shaking hands was something was weird anyway and awkward always. So I'm totally fine just never doing that again. Brands, though, are already prepping for life post-COVID. The trendy menswear brand called Suit Supply is going all in on the optimism that post-vaccination, that this summer is going to look something like, out of like Ibiza partying. They have this new ad campaign. It's called The New Normal, and it features models just crawling and licking each other. The company says it's all about showing a positive outlook and getting close again, but it did go viral on social media, and I think I there's a reason it's resonating.
Oh yeah, I got that ad. I love Suit Supply, by the way. Great suits, pretty reasonable price. But yeah, I think everyone should be prepared to start seeing billboards, ad campaigns, commercials, just like we got there was that horrible spate of commercials back in the spring of like big brands being like, even though we're alone, we can still be together. Remember that whole thing that was. So I think you're going to start to see everyone's going to try and market to this, right? The economy's about to go nuts.
I feel like this podcast, we have friends of the pod who don't even know we exist, and we do ads for companies and don't get paid for it. So Suit Supply, like you just gave your full endorsement for this company.
If they want to send me a suit, I am down, baby.
On to politics now. In the Senate, the stimulus bill is moving forward, although Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin forced a delay by invoking a rule that requires the entire 630-page bill be read aloud in the Senate chamber. It looks like the clerks just finished up. It took them 11 straight hours.
Thank you for your service.
More, to tell you the truth.
Well, they were ripping through it when I checked last night before bed. They were doing like 2 pages a minute. So thank you for your service to these poor Senate clerks. One of these days when we're through the pandemic, we really they have got to rewrite the Senate rules already. Like these arcane things that they do to slow stuff down that doesn't actually change any legislation. It's just to like sort of make a point. It's really, I think it's outworn its welcome. If they're gonna do something like that, they should at least.
Can I just say though? I actually, I don't mind it. I think that they should do that for every bill, because you've heard
just
reading
stories, it, you mean?
Right? They've dragged their feet for months. Okay, this money is so late in the game that it's coming. Like they're money for vaccinations, money, unemployment money. We're how long are we into this thing?
Right.
So to me, I think every bill should be read out loud. They should.
Yeah, I guess that's an argument.
And
you know what they should do?
Why is that a problem? I mean, like, I don't know. I think
I think that
if they don't know what's in it, I think that's the bigger problem.
Well, the thing is, none of them were there to listen to it, right? So it's not like it was like the Senate clerks were reading to them and being like, okay, just so you guys all know what you're voting for. Nobody was even in the chamber.
It was an empty chamber?
Yeah, it was just to make this, just to stall it, right? I agree with you that they should have to be there. And if you're gonna pull a move like that, you should have to read it yourself. That would be my rule.
I just think it should be part of the process, because like you've heard these stories where for whether it's this bill or a different one, where they don't read it,
they
don't
never
know
read
what's
it,
in it. And perhaps
they don't
you'd
read
be
any
like shamed about throwing in some pork in there if you knew that it was going to be read out loud and streamed somewhere that people could watch.
That's a fair argument. Sure.
Because the stimulus is still being negotiated, today's February jobs report is going to be even more closely watched than usual. The country is expected to show a gain of about 200,000 jobs for the month. Stocks sold off ahead of the report on comments from Fed Chair Jerome Powell. The NASDAQ, which features the biggest names in tech, erasing all of its gains for the year. Powell said he was aware about rising bond yields and the prospect of rising inflation, but was not planning to change the central bank's easy money policies. So
I think yeah, exactly. I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think what's happening here is a lot of traders, a lot of investors are sort of rotating out of these stocks that have been just absolutely ripping during the pandemic, and they're putting more money into companies that they think are going to rise this year. Companies like in the entertainment, cruise industries, hospitality industries. So I think that's a lot of what's happening. Basically, people are preparing for the economy to take off like a rocket ship in the coming months, thanks to this combination that we've talked about a million times: stimulus spending, vaccinations getting better, interest rates remaining low. But in addition to these growing inflation worries, we've also got oil prices now at their highest levels in nearly 2 years. Crude oil is $65 a barrel. That we haven't seen that in a while. And there's concerns that could hamper the global recovery, especially in poor countries. OPEC yesterday just said they're not going to increase output, which is why crude spiked as high as it did, by the way.
Look, I don't know if you've noticed it, but everything, I think, a lot of goods, especially food, is costing a whole lot more. I mean,
Hmm.
and I know we've joked about me ordering my Whole Foods for delivery, but I just am amazed at the prices. And it's not just because it's Whole Foods, it's across the board. The price of food has gone up so dramatically. So this stuff is real. Like this, we just want to spend, not worry about deficits, kind of like print more money, but it does have an impact eventually. By the way, yesterday we got unemployment claims. For first-time unemployment claims, it was about 750,000 Americans filed for first-time unemployment claims last week. So we are a year into this pandemic. Okay, so those are people who are first losing their jobs.
Yep.
It's about 4 times higher. If you're looking for just to figure out just some sort of perspective here, we're still about 4 times higher than during pre-pandemic, and higher than at any point during the Great Recession. So just think about that. Like that.
In terms of jobs lost.
Bad this is. In terms of people who are applying for first-time unemployment benefits,
Right.
we're still a year into the pandemic. It's more people than during the height of the Great Recession and the financial crisis. And it's about 4 times the amount of people that, pre-pandemic were applying for these benefits. Only about half of the jobs that had been lost at the start of the pandemic have been gained back. And most experts think it is going to take about 3 to 4 years to get back to any semblance of full employment. And just another opportunity I want to point out, this is being called a she session because women of color especially, just disproportionately impacted here for various reasons. Many work in the sectors that were hardest hit. A lot of women were forced out of the labor force because they just needed to stay home, and there's, many are still the
Sure.
primary caregivers for their children. So what this is doing to women in the workplace, I mean, it's basically setting women back decades, unfortunately. Overseas, Pope Francis just landed in Baghdad. He's embarking on the most dangerous trip of his papacy to date. Francis will be spending the next 4 days in Iraq, touring sites linked to the Bible and trying to avoid both the coronavirus and the worsening security situation in the country. Iraq is basically locked down for this trip. Francis will not greet the customary crowds that he loves, but he is expected to meet with an Iraqi Ayatollah who would be a first.
Yeah, this is an historic trip. It's the first time a pope has ever visited Iraq. Comes at a dicey time for Muslim-Christian relations in Iraq, which, remember, is a multi-faith country. It's a very diverse country. John Paul II, back in 2000, he was going to go, but Saddam Hussein basically uninvited him at the last minute. So they've been sort of trying to make this trip happen like for the last 20 years. And Francis, God love him, has just he's basically been told he shouldn't go. There's been these rocket attacks recently. There was a rocket attack the other day at a U.S. base in Iraq, and he said, "I'm not canceling on these people again." So the cool Pope, man, I love him. He's there. So we got to watch, and hopefully this will be a trip in which nothing happens. Put it that way.
Yeah, if it is a boring, uneventful trip, that'll be a good thing. I believe he got the Pfizer vaccine already, so I think he's fully vaccinated. I believe so.
I would hope so.
Okay, last spring, the running joke was that the pandemic lockdowns were going to create a baby boom that we'd be seeing materialize right about now. But pretty much the exact opposite has happened. Across the developed world, early data suggesting that the birth rate started to plunge 9 months after the pandemic started and is still in decline. About 300,000 fewer babies are expected to be born in the U.S. this year compared to last year. A similar trend is taking place in Japan, France, Italy, and the U.K.
Basically, everywhere in the developed world. It's really fascinating. Remember, I think we used to joke about this last spring. We'd be like, "Oh, there's going to be a baby boom," and then you would say, like, if you have children, no, there's lockdowns plus children. It's not exactly baby making season. But the economics of play are straightforward, right? When the labor market weakens, the birth rate declines. It sort of has always sort of been that way. Plus, you've got all of these other mitigating factors with COVID that has just made families who didn't lose jobs put their family planning on hold just because of all the stress, right? I mean, you're an example, right? You've talked openly about how you guys were sort of thinking about having another and sort of put that on hold this year. And meanwhile, I'm sort sort of the opposite because I am part of the baby boom that never came. But it's funny because ROB has said that they have seen a spike in births expected this spring. But that's South Brooklyn, which is like sort of a relatively wealthy place, maybe less impacted by these other issues.
Yeah, look, I think it seems like if you were at the stage where you were about to have a baby or you already had one and you knew you were wanting a second, then I feel like anecdotally, at least people I know just move forward with it. Like you, right? You guys knew you wanted to start a family and the pandemic wasn't going to stop you.
Right.
But I think if you were on the fence, like if you were like, do we have another baby? Or maybe if you're a younger person and you had time to wait to start a family, you're just like, this is not when we're doing it.
Right.
But most babies, by the way, are not planned. My doctor told me this when I was like, oh my God, I had a glass of wine. I didn't know I was pregnant. And he's like, don't worry. Most people, or I don't know if it's most, but he's like a huge majority of people who get pregnant, it's unplanned. So perhaps that is another reason why, no one's going out or doing anything. Let's talk a little business here. Square, the point of sale payment service that you probably used the last time you went to the coffee shop, buying a significant majority of Tidal. That is the music streaming platform owned by Jay-Z and some other artists. Square, which is run by Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, is going to be paying $297 million. And Jay-Z is now joining Square's board. This broke yesterday, Carlo, while we were on air for Wake Up with Cheddar. So it happened like right after we recorded the podcast. I was floored by this.
Doesn't make any sense to me. Jay-Z, by the way, Jay-Z has been selling off assets like, late stage Michael Jackson lately. He just sold a majority or a 50% stake in his champagne company, Ace of Spades. He sold that to LVMH, the big European luxury giant, something in the neighborhood of $300 million. I'm not exactly sure what Square would want with a failed streaming service like Tidal, but then again, $297 million, that's pocket change for a company like that. So I've read that people are saying it's just a way for Dorsey to like hang out with Jay-Z and Beyonce maybe.
Okay, so The Information, which is kind of like a tech, they cover tech, the tech world and business. I just want to read how they're taking this. They say, perhaps Dorsey got confused and thought the deal was being done through Twitter. That would be a better fit. For Square, this seems like one of those deals that CEOs do when they want to hang out with celebrities,
exactly.
To your point. Tidal, owned by a group of musical artists, most prominently the music mogul Jay-Z, who last summer went sailing with Dorsey and is going to be joining the Square board. Dorsey said the deal would help Square create new tools for artists by creating new listening experiences to bring fans closer together, as well as merchandising integrations and new revenue streams. In reality, Dorsey's trying to jam a square peg into a round hole. It seems like, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to play out, but it seems like that is, if you're wondering, like, for real, what was the thinking behind it? I think from a business perspective, Square is just a digital way to pay artists, and they're going all in on Bitcoin as well. So I don't know. Maybe perhaps it's just something in that sense, a new kind of fan experience. I don't know. We'll see. Tidal was an interesting, just before we move on, Tidal was really interesting when it came out back in 2015 because it was supposed to solve this problem that we've been talking about of musicians not being paid well enough on these streaming platforms. The problem was it had this fundamental issue where musicians most of the time don't own their music. So it's not like they can just be like, I'm only going to put my music on Tidal. That's up to the record labels, and the record labels didn't want to do that because nobody was listening to it. So the business never really made sense. It seemed great. I mean, it was such a big deal. And you kind of think with Jay-Z and Rihanna and Beyonce and their names attached, you're like, oh, it's definitely going to be a hit. But you're right. It never really took off. There were too many other artists who just weren't on it, I think was the problem, that it was hard to rationalize paying for another music streaming service.
Exactly.
All right, let's do a little love, hate, hate to end the week. One thing that we love, joining a Zoom call for work and realizing that everybody has their camera off, which means you've got license to turn your camera off. Bye, Felicia.
What is the deal with like? I mean, I'm asking this like a year into this, but what is the protocol with cameras on? Because I've just completely stopped, pretty much. I used to like have my camera on. I'd be sitting at a desk. Now I'm just like, legs up on the couch, not even attempting. Anyway, yeah,
I always thought you had to do meetings. Like I always assumed that everyone was going to have their video on. So I would
yeah,
make myself a little bit presentable, especially in the afternoon when I'd already
yeah,
showered, taken my makeup off, etc. But any call I've ever been on, I'd be one of maybe two people who'd have the video
yeah.
on. And I'm like, it's almost weird.
People
Done.
have given up, I
Bye.
think. Okay, one thing that we hate, sneezing into your mask. Didn't we talk about this last week? I think I described it as a diaper blowout for your face, which is apt. But it also reminds me that I was thinking about yesterday as I was doing my daily stroll. I am all in on face masks in the winter. Like I think next winter, even if we're not wearing masks, I'm rocking the surgical mask because it's just like a face warmer. Right? It
Yeah.
just keeps the wind away from your nose, and you get to get a runny nose. I'm down.
And it protects your skin as well. So my dad
Yeah.
once in a while drives me into the office. Um, just if
Hmm.
whatever, he drives me in from Long Island and picks me up because he's the best. But we wear masks. So, like I'll sit in the back with a double mask and he's in the front with a mask and I have my window down. And I'm a sneezer. So I'll have to sneeze sometimes and I'm just like, don't just hold it
Oh
in.
God.
I mean, look, it tells you that the mask is doing what it's supposed to do, which is preventing your germs
Yeah.
from going all over the place. But then they're like stuck. It's so gross.
Yeah.
The
It's
rest of
gross.
the ride will be just so brutal because I'm like, how I need to get this mask
Snot
off.
all
It's just gross. And then you can't even
sneezing in public, by the way, is right. It's so bad. When you sneeze in public, now you feel like a leper. You feel like everybody like in the grocery store is like, oh my God, get this guy out of here.
when we go back to work, I mean, if somebody coughs in the office, I think it's going to be a problem. I feel like everyone's going to be
Oh yeah.
like, go home.
Yeah. Execute this
Um,
person.
okay, one thing that we ate, healthy cookies. So this was a recipe, and I say recipe lightly, but this was a recipe that my friend Britt, who is an anchor over in Colorado, that she posted online, and I made it. Banana, oats, chocolate chips, and a splash of vanilla extract. You smash it together. You make your little cookies. You put them in the oven for about 15 to 20 minutes on 350 degrees. And voila, you've got seriously healthy, delicious cookies. Highly
Ooh,
recommend. Super easy. You can't overcook, can't undercook. Just a good recipe.
I'm sold. I'm gonna try those tonight. I have all the ingredients.
And if, seriously, they're great. And if anybody wants the like measurements and stuff, just email us and I'll send it over to you. Jill at Cheddar.com.
Thank you, Wags.
Okay, guys, it's a great weekend cookie as well. Okay, so we're gonna end it here. Another reminder: not daylight saving this weekend. That's how we
Yes, thank
started the
you.
week, I think.
Thank you.
So if you've only listened
One
to
more
this
week to
podcast,
go.
yeah, don't change the clocks. All right, that's what you need to know for Friday, March 5th.
See you guys.